Thank you, Bob. I'd like to start in trying to anticipate some of the questions that everybody might have with a little bit of an assessment, my assessment of the way I think the year went, and a little bit of a projection on what we can expect going forward. I'm going to start with a pretty obvious statement. There's lots of work ahead. There's lots of work to do. That is very clear to everybody in our organization that that we've got. It's time to roll our sleeves up and continue to do that and forge forward. And lots of work to do with the group. I think my assessment of the year was the season started with great expectation. Maybe not great expectation, but certainly high expectation. We had internally high expectations from our group at the start, and right from the start of the year, things didn't go well. We did not live up to the expectations that we had internally, nor did we live up to the external expectations from our fans in terms of our performance level. Frankly, we didn't function well as a group early on in the year. Our team didn't function well with all the change, the coaching change, the personnel change. We struggled mightily early in the year, and we've been trying to play catch up ever since. It's exactly the start that we didn't want, and you know, we've been trying to overcome that start virtually all year long. I want to talk a little bit about my vision for the hockey team. My vision has stayed the same since I took the job a year ago. We're building a team that's going to be capable of winning a Stanley Cup. That's what we're doing. And I know that falls on some deaf ears currently, but that is our vision, and that's why we're in it as Edmonton Oilers. I think I've got a pretty good idea on the pulse of our fans and what our fans want. I mean, it's been a painful process for them as well as us, but every decision I make as a manager starts with that first question. Does this help us build a team that can win a Stanley Cup? That's the vision for our group. I wanted to talk a little bit about the culture of the organization. We want character. And when I took the job over, my mandate was to bring in character, bring in some leadership, and we're very much committed to character. We want hardworking people. We want competitive people. And the strategy is really a simple one, but the sophistication is in the execution of that strategy, and we're going to be very committed to a man in our organization to bring in people through the draft, trades, sign, people that have character. I want players on our bench, when that puck goes in our net, to feel as bad as the coach. That, to me, is great character, and I think we've made quite a few inroads in terms of adding those types of elements to our developing core group of players that are ultimately going to lead us out of this. The coach. I think I'm more confident in my decision to hire Dallas Aikens today than the day that I hired him. I'm more convinced that this guy is the right coach to lead us into much more successful times. Time will prove, in my mind, time will prove that this coach was a very good hire for our organization. I really feel like he's the guy to add the cultural elements and police the cultural elements that are necessary to build the type of quality team that we're trying to build. The thing I like about Dallas is he's relentless. And the messaging, in spite of the ups and downs and the difficult times the team has had over the course of the year, the messaging has all stayed the same. His message is very clear. He's relentless in his messaging, and it's quite clear to me in watching the development of our group over the last 30 games or so that the players are buying into the direction and the leadership from our head coach. As for the other pieces of our coaching staff, I will sit down with Dallas at the end of the year after a week or so we can let the emotions subside a little bit and have a very constructive discussion about the rest of the coaching staff. But my sense is that we have the right people. We have the right coaches in place, and it's my responsibility to support those coaches in any way I can, but most importantly for me is to support those coaches in improved player personnel decisions and bringing in people that fit the culture that we have and can improve on the group that we have. I think my other mandate coming in here was to turn the team over to the core group of people that I feel are going to have to develop and lead us out of this malaise that we've been in the last number of years. Most of those players, if not all of them, have had career years, and I think that gets lost in some of the negativity when you're looking and focused as we all are on the results. We have a lot of the pieces that we need to develop are developing before our eyes. So that's a little bit of an assessment of where I think we're at, and now I'd like to open it up to any questions anybody has.
I just want to ask you about Dallas. Yeah. Right? What have you seen in his approach that has given you that confidence in this year like this?
Well, for me, it's his value system is really coincides with my value system and what I think is very important to bond this group. The work ethic, the leadership, the accountability, and you know, I think that the thing that you really look to at the end is the improvement in the play and the positional play of the group, and to get this group through the type of year that we had and to end with their as positively as maybe not positively, but as energetically as we did was a tribute to that leadership. And I think his messaging, as I said, has always been consistent. He's relentless in his messaging. The players know what the expectation is. We're going to have the continuity in the coaching. I think he's been very open-minded in the discussions that I've had, which is important. You may view him a little differently than I do in that regard, but he's a very, very open-minded guy, and I think he's got a ton of confidence. And you need that confidence level to do this job in today's NHL, and I think he's going to bear himself out to be a terrific and a great coach for us.
How much leeway does he have, though? Like if you're in a similar situation.
Well, I mean, for me to start crafting scenarios of a demise next year is something that I won't do, and I don't predict that. I'm not going to manage my team anticipating failure, and I'm an optimistic guy. I've got reason to be optimistic. You could say I'm coming out here. I mean, we're all at the point now where we want to see results. Words are empty, but I very much believe in what I'm telling you. And you can criticize me or criticize some of the things that I've done, but I'm always forthright. And I'm forthright with what I'm saying right now. I'm very optimistic, very bullish about the future of this team. There's been a lot of pain and suffering, but at the end of the day, the failure gives us great opportunity to continue to get better. We'll get another piece this year. We're way further ahead in my mind, and I know that's debatable, and you can analyze that and draw your own conclusions there. But in my mind, we're way further ahead right now than we were at this point last year. We've got consistency of messaging, continuity of coaching, developing players, big pieces. So I'm very optimistic on the future. Where are we on this development stage? Where are we? It's hard to determine right now, but we're not at the start. We're well along the way. We're closer to the end in my mind than we are to the beginning in terms of the development of this team. And most of the heavy lifting, I think, is in place now. And we've got to, I've got to do a good job. Scott Housen's got to do a good job with our player personnel decisions. And we need a few pieces that could really move this thing along.
Greg, might this be the most important offseason in the club's history?
Well, the one thing I'll say about that is there is never a finish line in this business. And the circumstances and the situation changes every year, but there is no finish line in this business. Every offseason for every one of the 30 teams is extremely important. My focus going into the offseason is I'm going to be hard at work. I'm going to be making the phone calls. I'm going to be having the discussions with the other 29 managers to see if there's something that's going to improve our hockey team. And I'm trying to determine value. I'm trying to determine whether there's a fit to do something. In my mind, I'd like to add a very high-end defenseman. I think I wouldn't be alone with 29 other general managers in that objective. But to me, I won't be adding anything in the middle. And if I can get something that I think is going to really move the dial of our team from the back end, I'll be involved in those discussions and consider that. We talked about results and not words. I've talked about Oscar Klefbom the last few years, our developing defenseman. Now we're seeing that. I think everybody had a pretty good idea of Oscar Klefbom's ability. At the end of this year, he was outstanding, as was Justin Schultz, as was Marty Marincin, Jeff Petrie, for some of the criticism that he took at times. Had a career year in a lot of statistical categories, so he's a developing player as well. So there's lots of development. Darnell Nurse is down in the American Hockey League at this time, so there's a lot of optimism internally, and I would hope externally with the core group of defensemen that we have. So if we have to go young, we go young.
What do you have to do in this offseason to have a successful year next year?
Well, what I have to do is do as much work as I can and assess all the options available to me and not do anything stupid. That's what I have to do. Don't do anything stupid. If we get something that makes sense, we'll make that decision and then we'll make that change. But I've got some specific personnel pieces and objectives in mind. And as I said with the defense, I won't be adding anything middle of the road to this defense core. I think our younger guys can fill those positions. If I can, there's going to be one thing in this game for sure. When you finish out of the playoffs, you know one thing for sure. There's in 10 days, there's going to be 8 more pissed off teams. You know, so that's going to lead to opportunity, and maybe we have a fit with a more experienced team to add some experience and add that piece, and those are the things I'll be looking to do.
Craig, you mentioned you feel you have the right guys in your assistant staff. What have they done the last few years, maybe better at their job than the previous head coaches did to lose their job? You know, like the assistants have stayed, but the head coaches are the ones losing. So I'm just wondering, what do you see that the assistants do so well that they stay, but the head coaches have left?
Well, last year it was Dallas's decision. I think that the head coach should decide on what his staff is, especially a coach that's getting his first NHL job. It's important that he has the absolute right mix of coaches for him. So Dallas, from the start, said that he would interview. We explored other coaches. We brought in Keith Acton as an associate coach last year. Dallas spoke with Steve Smith, who I really feel is developing into an exceptional coach. He's got great rapport, and Kelly Buchberger, for all the things that he does and the cultural piece that he adds, that gives us a little bit of a tie to a much more successful era. He's got you listen to Ryan Smith and some of the things that he said about Kelly Buchberger. Kelly Buchberger has a lot of great traits in my mind that he adds to this hockey club, and but ultimately it's the head coach's decision. I feel like they're the right piece, but he's got to feel like they're the right and I really feel like this staff reached really started to function well together at the end of the year. I mean, it was chaos early, It was absolute chaos, but there was disappointment, there was negativity in the coaches' room, but I think there was a harmony and a working relationship that really stabilized itself at the end of the year. And you know, this isn't about coaching all the time. I mean, it's on player personnel decisions. It's on development of our players internally. And the easiest piece to get rid of would be the assistant coaches. But I mean, they function well in a group. But the far bigger part of this is the player personnel decisions that I need to make to help support their job and make them look a whole lot more effective than the records would speak to.
Greg, can you get rid of it? Can you get a high-end defenseman without trading one of your core players?
Well, that's a question I'll be asking. I think we can. I mean, there are lots of assets that we have. Notwithstanding the draft choice, we have a considerable amount of assets in developing defensemen. So, I think we can. But I'll say this about the core group that I refer to. This group, we're building our team around this group. And you have to have pieces in that locker room that you view as guys that are going to develop into winners, guys that are going to develop into superstars. And I feel strongly that we have a number of those pieces in there. And those are the guys we're going to build that team around. And I want them to feel the ownership. I want them to feel the loyalty from myself and the coaching staff that we have the confidence in them to drive this team forward. And when you talk to those players, Jordan Eberle, Nugent Hopkins, certainly Taylor Hall, Justin Schultz, those guys have to feel that they're the Edmonton Oilers and they have the responsibility to drive this core for many years.
Craig, you mentioned Justin Schultz and Jeff Petrie. Specific to Schultz, he is a restricted free agent, as is Petrie. You see Schultz as part of the core. How do you envision contract negotiations? Are you open to long-term as opposed to perhaps a bridge? Where's your headspace?
Well, I'm open to both. I mean, it'll be dependent on really what Justin wants to do. And but I think I've been clear all along on the upside that I see from Justin Schultz. He's a developing player. He's just completed his first NHL season. His upside is limitless. And so I have a lot of confidence and would have the confidence to extend Justin on a long-term deal. When I analyze the deals that we've extended to some of the other players, some of the other long-term deals, I don't think, I mean, the argument against a long-term deal for a young player is that it takes away their motivation. But I can't say that any of those long-term deals has dissuaded any of those individuals from aspiring to be as good as they can be. And
I know you find out tonight exactly where you'll have a pick, but how likely is it that there might be a scenario where you would entertain offers for the first-round draft pick, or perhaps
the scenario for I'll entertain all offers. I mean, I've said that all along. You'd be a fool not to. But it's our management groups. We're charged with defining value and trying to get fair value for a draft choice, for moving the draft choice, for moving up, for moving back, and we'll be having all those conversations, and those conversations will start very, very quickly. But I've said this before. I went into last year's draft with the same sense, and there was nothing that remotely tempted me to move back or move ahead with that draft choice.
I think everybody and their dog has identified the big defenseman and the center. What if you got one or the other one in the draft? Would that prioritize the one you didn't get as being your number one thing you need to accomplish in the offseason?
That's fair. And we'll be having those conversations. Maybe you acquire one of those pieces through trade, and maybe you get one through draft. But that's the first step in all of that is to see what pick we're going to have, and we'll know that tonight. And then we sit down with our scouts and see what we might get with that pick.
There is no first player, obviously,
No, I think that's fair. I mean, it's more individual preference right now in the top group of 4 or 5 players. I think you know, if you had 10 scouts, you might have 10 different lists on how they rate 1 through 5 or 1 through 4.
You don't have a thing where you say, I need a defenseman more than a center.
Not really. Our drafting philosophy is always our drafting philosophy that we instituted last year was to draft the player that's going to have the greatest impact on his team over time. That's our philosophy.
Cap Peak looks like you've got mid-$20 million to deal with, obviously, with Schultz and others going to come down. But it looks like you've got upwards of 15 by the time you do your deals. How important and well do you think you could use that money?
Well, I mean, again, it's an assessment of value, and we'll see what's available. We'll have our meetings prior to the UFA season. We'll target our players. The UFA market for defensemen is weak this year. Everybody's signing their defensemen, as Philadelphia did with McDonald. So there's you know, there aren't very many high-end defensemen that are getting to the market. So we do have some financial flexibility from our ownership. So, but we want to make sure that we're spending that money prudently.
And is there any chance in the world you could make an offer that can't refuse for whoever?
I can't comment on individual players.
John?
Yeah.
Craig, from what you've learned on and about the job over the past year, what of that knowledge do you think will benefit you most in managing this organization and going into the offseason?
It's a good question. It's you know, the takeaway for me is it's all about relationships, and it's about establishing those relationships. It's about communicating, and it's very much the way that I felt when I coached. It's communication and establishing relationships. As a coach, you do it with the players, and as a manager, you do it with other managers. And you establish those relationships, and they spur different conversations, even to check in and say hello, what's going on. Like, you've got to do your homework. You've got to stay active, and it's very much a business that's vested in communication.
Here, John, you talked today, obviously, about reports of your core group having career years, and that's the group you're building around. Dallas talked quite forcefully the last few times about the best players have to be the best players 5 nights out of 5, not 4 nights out of 5. That's where the winning will come from. Should one of those, I mean, no disrespect whatsoever to Andrew Ference, but should one of those core players, given their importance to this game, be the captain? And if not now, when?
Well, I think the leadership that we got from Andrew Ference was as billed. I think, again, that our players' leadership ability is developing. I think their performance is developing. And I think that currently Andrew Ference is our best choice for captaincy. He's got a lot of the qualities that we hold in high esteem. He's excellent in the community. It's not just about being a good leader in the locker room. He's a great family man. He's excellent in the community, and he's an extremely hardworking individual. And that's the type of guy that we want. And he's going to have a great residual benefit on all those core members in terms of teaching them and role modeling for them what leadership looks like. And they will be the captain. Somebody in that group will be the captain at some point in the not too distant future, but it's not next year.
Couple, 3 more here.
Craig, you mentioned you're not going to look for kind of a middle-of-the-road defenseman to go with the young guys. What about your 4 group? Your top 4, of course, produced a lot. You didn't get a lot of secondary scoring. Smith's now gone. Will you look elsewhere to improve that, or do you think you've got some guys in your system that can fill in the middle roles offensively?
We've got to look elsewhere for some of the help in those positions. That's an area that we've identified that we would like to improve in. I mean, the draft, you develop players, you sign players and trade players. So we'll be trying to do all those things to try and get us a more productive second line. If Hall, Eberle, and Hopkins are going to continue to play together, we need we're going to need a more productive second line than what we had this year. We'd like to get more secondary scoring out of a third line than we had this year. So, as I said, there's lots of work to be done, but those are all, you're all touching on areas that we've discussed and areas that we're going to be looking to improve in.
Joanne? I have 2 questions. Free agency you touched on. Are you going to find it harder now to bring free agents in given the results this season, do you think?
Well, I don't, I haven't lost the passion for selling our situation. And, you know, I was never great in sales, but when you're passionate about something and you believe in something, you can sell it. And we've had the ability, we've got, at the end of the day, it has a lot to do with resources and the number on the contract. But I think that there are, outside of the city of Edmonton that's been enduring this for quite a period of time, there's a lot of optimism out there. And there's great self-satisfaction in building something from near the ground floor up. And I think players, certainly the players that we'd like to acquire, would have would find that extremely fulfilling and rewarding professionally.
And on the other side of that, your scouting staff, are they falling into the evaluation process this offseason?
The amateur scouts, I'll say with the amateur scouts that, you know, Steve Tambellini put a lot of detail into the amateur scouts that maybe wasn't there currently. So the legwork and the level of detail that the amateur scouts have on players, to me, is impressive. And I mean, the knee-jerk reaction is to, okay, bring it, continually fire somebody, bring somebody else in. But at what point are we responsible to continue the development of the group that we have? And I'm satisfied with the pro scouts and the amateur scouts that we have good people in there. They need good leadership. They need to be supported by leadership, and we need to continue to get better and develop. And that's very much where I am as a manager right now, in terms of focusing my attention on helping the current group that we have and give them all the resources necessary so when we're spitting out the selections, we're making the right calls.
Time for a few more men, and John.
Obviously, it's been documented the negativity that's around the team, just with the losses and whatnot this year. But in that last game, Smitty, there's obviously a lot of passion shown by the fans, something a lot of players hadn't really seen. Your reaction to just some of their comments about, you know, seeing that, maybe obviously looking forward, wanting to try and get that through victories, you know, that is available.
Well, we'll be focusing on our start next year to make sure that we can ride some of the momentum. And, you know, it was great for our current group of players to see that type of passion out of our fans on one side, and also great for our players to see a player leave as revered as Ryan Smith is with our group. And why is he revered? Because of his work ethic and his passion. And this game's all about passion, but our building was a difficult building for our players at times, and it's always been a symbiotic relationship between the fans and the players that we've always fed off each other, with the exception of the extremes. The extreme low performance is tough to energize the fans, and it's tough for the fans to energize the players at that performance level. But our expectation next year is that we start well. There's an energy in the building that and enthusiasm, and it's up to us to capture that through a higher level performance on the ice.
One final one from John.
Craig, you talked about development. Are you pleased with the process between the farm and the big club and the way that transition has been working? And then, for example, a guy like Neil Yakupov, would it have been better served for him to go to the minors before coming up to the big club? And are those types of decisions that you're learning on a job on how to process and develop these players?
Yeah, I think that our development process and our development department, in my mind, is the best in the game. We've, through ownership, been able to have at our disposal the resources necessary to make sure that our players, and that department continues to evolve. We've got we've got plenty of resources invested in the development of our young guys. We can talk a little bit about Nail, but you know, my sense is there have been a lot of guys that go through a sophomore jinx. Soft sophomore season. A lot of great players that have struggled in their sophomore year, and we're looking for Nail to improve. He's getting bigger and stronger, and you know, sending him to Oklahoma City was never in the cards from my standpoint. It's when you pick a guy as the #1 pick in the draft, you're committed to bringing him into your organization and developing him immediately. And I can't think of another #1 pick or too many that spent too much time in the minors. And we're committed to developing Nail. But we are seeing that we're getting some results through the development. Our coaching staff in the American Hockey League, led by Todd Nelson, is exceptional. They've overcome a pretty significant deficit and are competing now in a playoff position, which is incredible given the turnaround that Todd and the staff has had down there. But I'm very happy with that part of our organization.
Greg, there's been a story that's been floating around for the last little while. We've heard from people within the organization that when the team drafted Yakupov, Cates had stepped in to make a push for Nail. I know that wasn't under your watch, but can you clear the air on that, and you have complete autonomy?
Well, what I'll say is, without getting into the detail of the conversations that are pretty private within our group internally on the processes that we use to draft players, we very much targeted Nail Yakupov as an offensive phenom. We felt that he was very deserving of being the #1 pick. We felt that his upside was maybe higher than Ryan Murray in Columbus, that Columbus ultimately drafted. So we drafted him for the right reasons. We still believe he's going to be a great goal scorer, and there's a premium on goal scoring. And Colorado did a similar thing last year when they drafted Nathan McKinnon. So there's lots of upside in Nail, and it's up to us and our organization to get that from him. But he was a very legitimate #1 pick, and we still feel strongly that we made the right decision.
Great, thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Craig.
Okay, thank you.